The Chosen Path, Episode 6 of 10. Why the chosen walk alone before they lead others. There is a sacred weight that few understand, not because it is heavy, but because it is hidden. Every chosen one, at some point in their journey, must walk alone. Not because they are unloved, not because they are forgotten, but because they are being formed apart from the crowd. You didn't choose solitude. It was given to you as a spiritual assignment. Before you can carry others, you must learn how to carry yourself. Before you can speak to crowds, you must learn to hear God in silence. Before you can lead, you must walk paths no one else dares to walk. The lonely path is not a punishment. It's a preparation ground. It's where your discernment is sharpened, where your dependency on people is stripped away, where your voice becomes pure, because it echoes from the depth of your soul, not the noise of the world. Many are called, but few are willing to walk alone. Few endure the silence, few embrace the wilderness, few remain when no applause is given. But the chosen, they do, because deep down they know this isolation is not rejection. It's initiation. You are not alone because you failed. You are alone because you were marked to walk ahead, so one day you could lead others behind you. Silence is not empty. It is filled with sound too sacred for human ears. It is in silence that the voice of the chosen is birthed. You may have wondered why you were taken away from familiar places, why the phones stopped ringing, why the crowds stopped gathering, why the noise around you faded. But heaven was silencing the world, so you could hear your true sound. Because the voice that carries destiny doesn't come from training alone. It comes from consecration in silence. Before God sends a voice into the earth, he often hides it in stillness. He molds its tone, its depth, its discernment, not in platforms, but in private places. The world may think you disappeared, but in truth, you are being amplified in the spirit. Every word you'll speak in the future is being rooted now in the silent soil of your soul. Your voice is being taught to carry weight, not noise, to echo heaven, not echo people, to release revelation, not just sound. And the silence you endure now will become the very foundation of the authority you walk in later. When you emerge, you won't just speak louder, you'll speak deeper. Because the chosen don't just talk, they resound. You wondered why you were pulled away, why people drifted, why opportunities evaporated, why the path that was once crowded became silent and narrow. But you were not being punished. You were being positioned. Before God pushes you forward, he pulls you back. Not to delay you, but to realign your soul with heaven's rhythm. The pullback is not rejection, it's divine preparation. Like an arrow in the hands of the archer, it must be drawn back deeply before it can be launched with force and precision. You were being pulled out of distractions, out of noise, out of misalignment, so that when the moment comes, you don't move by ambition, you move by assignment. The chosen are not thrown forward without formation. They are not released before being reshaped. You were pulled into silence so your spirit could unlearn what your flesh tried to cling to. You were pulled into solitude so your eyes could see beyond the surface. You were pulled away from certain people so your ears could be tuned to the voice of heaven. Because leadership in the kingdom is not a race to the front. It's a call to deep surrender behind the veil, and those who try to rise without first being pulled carry presence without weight, authority without intimacy, and influence without identity. But not you. Because you were pulled, you will be launched with purpose. You were hidden, reshaped, and realigned. So when God pushes you forward, you don't just arrive, you carry glory. There is a divine reason why no one saw your becoming. Why your most transformative seasons had no audience. Why your breakthroughs were not celebrated, only endured. Why your tears were shed in silence and no one noticed. Because what heaven builds in you in secret cannot be validated by public eyes, only by divine eyes. You weren't overlooked. You were shielded from being exposed before your formation was complete. The chosen are often asked to walk through their most sacred transitions, without applause, without confirmation, without witnesses. Because this path was never about proving yourself to people, it was about proving your heart to God. The silence around you wasn't abandonment, it was protection. God didn't want your growth contaminated by opinions. He didn't want your calling diluted by premature affirmation. He wanted your identity to be rooted in His presence, not in people's perception. That's why you had to walk alone. That's why no one noticed your progress. That's why no one celebrated your steps. Not because it wasn't progress, but because it was sacred, and sacred things are not exposed before time. You were never unseen. You were simply being preserved for the right moment. Preserved for a purpose that doesn't need validation, only obedience. And when the time comes, you won't need to explain your growth. Your presence will speak what your process built. The ones who walk unseen are the ones heaven trusts to one day be seen without pride. Isolation is when the world forgets you. But consecration is when heaven separates you. Many people confuse the two. They think because you are alone, you are abandoned. They think because you are hidden, you are lost. They think because you are quiet, you are irrelevant. But what they don't know is that you were not isolated by accident. You were consecrated by assignment. God removed you from noise so He could tune your spirit. He shut doors so He could open your discernment. He closed circles so He could enlarge your calling. You weren't being left out. You were being set apart. Consecration is the environment where oil is poured. It's the holy chamber where heaven refines character, heals wounds, restores identity, and deposits weight. Isolation feels empty. But consecration is full of presence, full of silence, yes, but also full of purpose. You don't emerge from consecration the same. You don't walk out talking louder. You walk out carrying something sacred. The chosen don't just go through isolation. They go through transfiguration. Their posture changes, their vision sharpens, their voice deepens, their heart becomes softer, yet stronger. So, if you're walking alone, don't call it loneliness too quickly. You may be walking through your holiest formation, and when you step out of this season, people will ask, where did this authority come from? And the answer will be simple. It came from the place where no one else was allowed to go, the place of consecration. You cannot lead what you've never followed. You cannot guide others to the presence of God if you have not first walked alone through the fire of that presence. The greatest leaders in the kingdom are not those who rise in crowds, but those who are first led in secret by the Spirit. Before Moses led a nation, he was led into the wilderness. Before David ruled a kingdom, he was led into caves. Before Jesus preached to the multitudes, he was led by the Spirit into the desert, not for exposure, but for encounter. Not for influence, but for intimacy. The path of the chosen is not a stage. It is a secret place where God trains your heart before He releases your hands. You were led into silence so you could hear His whisper. You were led into solitude so your dependence would shift from people to presence, from applause to alignment, from visibility to vulnerability before the Father. Because when you are led in secret, you learn to follow in stillness. You learn to obey without signs. You learn to move when no one claps for you. And that's what forms true leadership. God doesn't trust leadership to the loudest, but to those who were faithful when no one was watching. Your hidden season wasn't a detour. It was your leadership academy in the spirit. And now, when you rise, you won't just carry information. You'll carry revelation birthed in the secret place. Everyone wants to be heard, but few are willing to pay the price of becoming a voice. Because a true voice, a voice that carries heaven's echo, is forged in fire, not fame. It's birthed in brokenness, not popularity. You don't become a voice because you want to be known. You become a voice because you were willing to be unknown, so heaven could shape your sound in private. The cost of becoming a voice is walking alone when no one understands your silence. It's being misunderstood while you are being refined. It's carrying words no one is ready to hear, but still being faithful to the process of becoming. Before you speak to others, you must survive the silence within yourself. Before you release light, you must confront your own shadows. Before you guide people through storms, you must have stood through your own tempests, not as a warrior of pride, but as a vessel of surrender. Becoming a voice is not a platform. It's a crushing. It's walking through seasons where no one affirms you, no one celebrates you, no one echoes back your sound. Because your sound isn't meant to echo, it's meant to break atmospheres. That's why you were separated. That's why you were tested. That's why your path felt longer, harder, lonelier. Because God wasn't just preparing your words. He was purifying your tone, so when you speak, it's not just noise, it's revelation. The cost is real. The journey is narrow, but the reward is sacred. You become the voice that awakens others. Because you first allowed heaven to awaken you. There will be seasons where you look around and realize no one is walking with you. No footsteps beside you, no voices encouraging you, no hands reaching toward you. Just silence, just shadows, just solitude. But even then, even there, you are not without guidance, because though no one walks beside you, heaven walks ahead of you. You may not hear applause, but you will feel presence. You may not see companions, but you will sense direction. The path of the chosen was never meant to be crowded. It was meant to be spirit-led. And when the road is empty, you begin to see what was hidden before, the signs in the spirit, the whispers in the wind, the invisible light on your feet. You begin to notice that every step has been orchestrated. Every detour was divine. Every silence had a voice inside it. Every delay was alignment. You've walked alone, but never unguided. You've cried alone, but never unaccompanied. You've stood alone, but heaven always stood above you, before you, around you. You didn't need the crowd. You needed the cloud. You didn't need directions from people. You needed direction from presence. And now, as you keep walking, you realize something deeper. Those who walk with heaven never truly walk alone, because the invisible path is the most secure one. What once felt like loneliness now feels like power. What once felt like abandonment now feels like foundation. Because something sacred happens when you endure solitude. You begin to grow roots where others only build facades. You begin to cultivate depth where others seek attention. You begin to discover who you are, without anyone else telling you. Solitude teaches you what no crowd can. It refines your voice. It clarifies your calling. It cleanses your motives. It strengthens your soul. The chosen are not strong because they are praised. They are strong because they were pressed in secret. They don't carry boldness because they were celebrated. They carry boldness because they were broken alone and stood back up by grace. The solitude taught you resilience. It taught you to walk by faith when sight betrayed you. It taught you to pray without proof, to serve without support, to remain when you could have walked away. And now, there's a different light in your eyes. Not pride, but presence. Not arrogance, but authority born in quiet places. You no longer need affirmation to feel aligned. You no longer depend on company to feel secure. You are not moved by silence, because you've learned that the louder the purpose, the quieter the preparation. That solitude didn't break you. It built you. And now, you are strong in a way no one can understand, because your strength was not inherited. It was born in hidden places. You were hidden, but you were never forgotten. You were refined, but you were never rejected. You were separated, but you were never cast aside. You were walking alone, but you were always being carried by purpose. And now comes the shift. Now comes the moment that was written in the silence, prepared in the shadows, forged in the wilderness. Because those who walk alone for a season are the very ones who will lead others in due time. Not with titles, but with presence. Not with pride, but with purity. Not for recognition, but for revelation. The ones heaven trusts most are the ones it forms far from the eyes of men. You may not have seen it coming, but heaven always knew. The hidden ones carry glory that no man can fabricate. Now your walk is different. Now your posture has weight. Now your voice has depth. Now your steps leave footprints that awaken others. You didn't just survive the solitude, you were anointed in it. And now when you lead, you don't lead from theory, you lead from testimony. Because you've lived what others only read about. You've walked where others only dream. You've endured what others ran from. And this is why you were set apart. Not just to rise, but to raise others from their shadows, because you know what it means to walk alone, and you know what it means to be sent with glory. You didn't walk alone for no reason. You didn't cry in silence without purpose. You didn't endure wilderness just to survive it. Everything you walked through was preparing you to walk with others. Those who are still in the dark. Those who are still in silence. Those who are still broken. You were set apart not to be superior, but to be a bridge for those still drowning in isolation. You were refined not to shine alone, but to bring light to those who don't even know they're called. The lonely path you walked was never about just your development, it was about their deliverance. You've become a voice for the voiceless, a guide for the wandering, a light for the weary, a testimony for the broken, because only those who have been broken in silence can carry healing in their sound. Now heaven looks at you and says, "Well done, faithful servant. Now rise and lead." If this message spoke to your soul, declare in the comments, "I was set apart to lead the broken." Tell us where you're watching from. Let your voice be heard. Let your calling be activated. Subscribe to The Chosen Awakening. Episode 7 is coming, and you will never walk alone again.